Hi, everybody. Welcome to Bill Has Opinions, the Gen Xiest show you will be listening to right now. So I am your co-host, Laura, and I am joined, of course, by Bill, who has opinions. Hello, Bill.
Hi there.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Isn't today kind of a special day for you, and you're still here doing Bill Has Opinions with us?
Yeah, I didn't think about it I don't know, it didn't occur to me until like over the weekend what day this is my anniversary. So this is the last thing I'm doing today officially, worked, and then I'm doing this, and then I'm off the rest of the evening to do anniversary stuff, whatever that is, considering the current times.
Sure. I think you can be very creative and come up with some pretty cool things to do. So,
yeah.
Cheers to that. Also, I think it's funny that we are talking about a subject that your wife actually dislikes on your anniversary. So it's as if we picked it on purpose.
Right.
We did not. So what are you drinking today?
Today I am drinking Catawba peanut butter and jelly time.
Ooh, I want some of that so bad.
Yeah, it's in the stores now. If people who don't live in this area aren't familiar, but peanut butter jelly time to me, it sounds like the kind of thing I wouldn't be at all into, but then I am into it, and it's a really good. It's kind of a desserty beer, but it's the thing that amazes me is how much it's like a daggum jelly bean almost. Like you drink it and you wonder how did they make that happen, right? Because it tastes so much like a peanut butter jelly sandwich, it's crazy, and
right?
It tastes like because you'll take a sip and you'll be like peanut butter, and then take another sip and you're like jelly, just like an actual sandwich where you get like more or less of the flavor.
Yeah,
So
it is stupid how good it is.
Yeah, it's really good. If you can get it, go out and get it, and if you can't get it, you can dream about it.
Exactly. And weirdly, as people will begin to understand soon, I think it also ties in with today's theme in a weird way. But sorta. So I have, speaking of today's theme, I have this here. It's a Yukio from Three Taverns right there in Atlanta. And the reason I picked this, so we may as well share what our topic of the day is, because our topic of the day is cartoons, as if people didn't know that, because if they've been paying attention, they've seen all the promos about it, so they know it anyway.
Right.
We're talking about cartoons, and this was the closest cartoon-related beer I had available, because ostensibly we could say it's about anime, I guess.
Sure.
So that's what I'm going with. So today's topic is cartoons. As you can see, I'm wearing my Scooby-Doo shirt. But I want to hear from you, Bill. Give us a little something, a little intro to cartoons and why we chose it for today.
Why did we choose cartoons? I don't know. We watched it probably because I have a tendency to overthink the backstory in cartoons sometimes. I think that's part of it. Like I'm always like, what's the motivation to this character? Why are these people doing this? Where did the guy get the money to do that thing? So, we had a promo a while back where my wife caught me rambling on about Paw Patrol because we were watching that at the house, and I was just like, I can't believe this nonsense, But anyway, so yeah, I do think a lot about cartoons, probably too much because I realize there's cartoons don't even obey the laws of physics, right? Like there's things that go on in cartoons that can't go on, but you do spend an inordinate amount of time once you get to a certain age going, wow, that's crazy. That cat's hair grew back like in the next, 5 seconds after he had it all mowed off with the lawnmower. I don't understand.
Well, and I think this also because we will be talking about a variety of types of cartoons, from kids' cartoons or, the cartoons we saw when we were kids, which, as we've described, we are both Gen X, so it's a very specific era of cartoons that we enjoyed. And then to cartoons that are made for adults our age they could be anything, they just happen to be animated. And I think in that case, you really can get into the very deep, very, in the weeds backstory for some of those characters.
Yeah, sure. But that's why I don't know. I've always liked, I don't love every cartoon I see, obviously, but, I like a lot of them. And I'm still watching them. So some of my favorite shows are cartoons.
You know, I wouldn't have thought so, and we will definitely talk about specific cartoons, but there are cartoons that are literally on my list of all-time favorite TV shows. So if it's good, it's good. It doesn't matter whether it's actors or animated.
Right.
It does not matter. So we went really fast. That 5 minutes went really fast. Normally at this point we would do a station break. It is early in the show, but I think we just go for the station break, do our announcements right now, because the rest of the topics, I have lists and lists and lists of cartoons. So I think we could probably go on forever about it.
Let's do that.
Absolutely. So you were telling me about a friend who just started a new thing. Can you tell us about that?
A friend of mine used to work in the TSA, and he's retired now, and he's doing woodworking and stone crafts and things. And it's called Nature's Imaginarium. And I know he's on Facebook, and maybe he's got an Etsy store. I'm not sure. I'll have to follow up and maybe leave some notes. But Nature's Imaginarium on Facebook. If you guys are on Facebook, for sure you can like that. He's making a lot of things with like rough edged wood slabs. He's making like charcuterie boards and some small tables and decorative pieces for your house. And anyway, I just wanted to throw that shout out right now since we don't have official sponsors yet. We're still just kind of going through our list of friends who have a thing going on.
Right. So if you're a friend, tell us about your thing going on and we'll plug it.
Exactly.
Why wouldn't we? But of course, you should also shout out because you're coming at us live from the Purple Onion as usual.
Live from the Purple Onion in Saluda, North Carolina. And they are now open from Thursday to Sunday, I think. They were up this past Sunday. That was Mother's Day. I don't know if that was special or not. Anyway, they're open on the weekends from 5 to 8 for curbside and takeout delivery, and you can put in your order ahead of time on their website and pick it up at your leisure. They're doing, like family meals. They got some farm-to-table grocery stuff. You got 6 packs of craft beers. You got fine wines, that kind of thing. So, it's kind of an interesting. They're changing up their business model a little bit because of all this, I don't know when dining room will resume at some point in the future, but, we're kind of playing that by ear. So anyway, yeah, if you're in the area, give them a shout out, get some food. You're tired of cooking anyway.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so beyond true. I am so tired of cooking. So any takeout opportunity is a good one. And whatever restaurant you are near and you support and your favorites, definitely support them right now.
Do that. If you're not in our area, support your local restaurant.
Exactly. Hey, and also don't forget, please comment. We can share your comments. We can read your comments. We can see your comments. We can talk behind your back about your comments. Actually, we can't because we're live and you're not. So we have to talk in front of your back. So just type in the comments and we can see it. So we want this to be audience participation. So join in.
Yeah, a little opposite than you say it. A little repeat after me.
Exactly. And on that note, cartoons.
Yeah.
Cartoons. So I figured we'd start at the beginning. Cartoons from our childhood.
Cartoons from our childhood. So my fondest, we were talking about this before we began, Scooby-Doo, obviously, it's kind of like, it's such a great cartoon because it's got it's spooky, but not too spooky. It's got laughs, it's got some interesting humor. It's got this sort of like, I don't know, and it's got these like archetypes, right? The types of characters who are in there. And of course, as people probably know, it's like loosely based on Dobie Gillis, the characters, and then they just threw in a talking dog along with it.
Because that's what you need. And to attract the audience, you need a Great Dane that talks.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you? And then they put them in this crazy van, and they're scooting around solving mysteries that are all the same mystery, really. It's just you know, and it's crazy because you watch it week after week after week, and it never occurs to you, like, just from the start, hey, why don't we just pull the mask off this ghost? I mean, and find out who it is. You know, instead we go through this whole half-hour nonsense of running around, and you know, I gotta say though, I don't know if you guys remember back in the mid '90s, they put out a soundtrack finally. Like Cartoon Network or somebody released the soundtrack for Scooby Doo, and I had been wanting that for years. And I mean, it had some good stuff on it. There were a couple of actual like songs from Scooby Doo,
Right.
And then the thing I liked though was I love the chase scene music. I don't know why, but I always loved that. You know, I just love the chase scene music. It's just. I don't know. It's like one of those things that sticks with you. It's kind of like the little motifs that they play in like Beverly Hillbillies and Andy Griffith and that kind of thing. You know, they have these like little musical interludes that let you know like this character is coming on the screen or this thing's about to happen. And I just when the music would get that way and you knew there was about to be a chase scene and they were going to run past the same door.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a very predictable show ultimately. Like that's one of those, and I think we'll talk about this too, but I just want to bring it up here a little bit. It's one of those things, Scooby-Doo suffers from this less than other cartoons, but it doesn't really hold up as like a complete narrative to watch as a standalone story. Like you have to understand it in the context of the time it was produced and for children.
Right.
Otherwise, it's you watch it as a 45-year-old person, and you're like, what happened? Why? How does Velma break her glasses every single time? I have worn glasses since I was 8, and I rarely break them. I've broken them a handful of times, but rarely broken them.
Does she break them or she just drops them?
Well, both, I guess. Yeah, even how you lose them. How do they go flying across the room? I don't have that problem.
Well, you're not being chased by witches and zombies.
That's true. I suppose, though, one thing I like about Scooby-Doo is that it is a parable. Like, it is the perfect parable because every episode, the monster turns out to be just a human. And so what I've learned from this is humans are monsters and that we just always need to be worried about people.
Particularly, it's an old white guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's all monsters are all white guys. That's the.
The best episodes too were the ones with special guest stars.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, like Davy Jones. That was a great one. That was a great one. The Harlem Globetrotters. I mean, you don't get much better than that.
The Harlem Globetrotters had their own Saturday morning cartoon for a year or two in the 70s that was the same animation style, really. I think it was also Hanna-Barbera. Yeah. Oh, and I also want to talk about for a second, first off, while we're on Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo had some – so Scooby-Doo ran and it had like 7 or 8 different iterations, right? Like it was like there was Scooby-Doo and there was Scooby-Doo Where Are You? And the all-new Scooby-Doo movies and this 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. And then like in the 80s, there was one called A Pup Named Scooby-Doo that was very, very self-referential that I actually loved the writing in that one. I thought it was great. I was a little bit older at that point, and I just thought it was awesome how sort of it was almost like a modern like a Cartoon Network kind of take on Scooby-Doo. You know what I mean? Like it really – and then, of course, they're actually still making Scooby-Doo movies up to this day, like animated movies, and sometimes they're a little self-referential in that. Actually, I think there was one made in the late 90s, early 2000s where I believe in the first scene, Shaggy attempts to pull the mask off of the monster.
Exactly.
And it turns out they're actually in this one they were actually monsters. They were not actually people in suits. But his first instinct is to let's just get this over with,
and leave it to the stoner guy who'd be like, I just want to go home and get high and eat my Scooby snacks. Like, let's just do this now and call it good. And then it backfires. Like it often does.
But so Scooby-Doo had some great spin-offs, but then also I also want to talk for just a moment about the Laugh Olympics because Scooby-Doo was also a cast member in that. Do you remember the Laugh Olympics?
Dude, I bet I didn't until this moment, but now I do.
Yeah, so that was one of my cartoons that I watched a lot when I was a kid too. When it was on for the couple of years it was on, I really loved the Laugh Olympics, and I always, of course, rooted for the Scooby Doobies because that was my team, right? Because I like Scooby Doo, and also Scooby Doobies. In addition to having Scooby Doo on the team, also had, I believe, some people from Dune Buggy, Speed Buggy, whatever it was called.
Yep.
Which was Speed Buggy was basically just Scooby Doo, but with a talking Dune Buggy instead of a great name, right? It was the same, same layout, really. And then, honest to God, actually, I think Jabberjaw was sort of that too, except for the talking shark was Curly from the Three Stooges. But
I mean, really, Hanna-Barbera had a very shallow well that they dipped into over and over and over again. And you know what? I'm okay with that.
And then, but the Blue Falcon, who was a blatant Batman ripoff, with a robotic Scooby-Doo sidekick,
right?
Was also on the Scooby Doobies. So that was another like selling point for Scooby Doobies to me. I hated the Really Rottens. If I was watching today, I might pull for the Really Rottens. I don't know, but I really hated the Yogi Bears. I don't know why, but everybody on that team annoys me. More than the Really Rottens did, honestly. I mean, because you expected the Really Rottens were going to cheat and they were going to lose most of the time. I think they won like 2 times in the whole series of the show. And then it was back and forth between the Yogi Bears and the Scooby Doobies on the number of wins. But I don't know why. I just hate the Yogi Bears. They just got on my nerves.
I love that so much. But so speaking of Hanna-Barbera, though, obviously they had all those shows and stuff, but, they really kind of set the bar, along with, Disney and Looney Tunes and stuff with the old, Flintstones and the Jetsons, which were even a little before our time, but we watched them constantly on TV because they were in constant syndication. Also, apparently, maybe the reason you don't like the Yogi Bears is because they stole your picnic basket.
They did not steal my picnic basket, but I don't know. They just rubbed me the wrong way.
Do you not like anthropomorphic bears in general? Like, how do you feel about Winnie the Pooh or Baloo?
Winnie the Pooh's all right. Yeah, I like the. Let's segue since you brought up anthropomorphic bears. Let's talk for a moment. A little later in time, let's jump to the early '80s and speak for a moment about Disney's Gummy Bears.
Oh my goodness! This is actually for viewers at home. This may have actually been the catalyst for choosing cartoons because we've been talking about it with our friends. Because it's all on Disney Plus now. You can watch the Gummy Bears, and it is the weirdest show ever.
And so you had some information on the backstory for Gummy Bears, like how it came up.
I don't know if it was me, but what I do know.
One of our friends said so. The guy who pitched the idea, I guess, he basically wrote the theme.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, there was I don't remember. A friend of ours, if you're watching, friend, please chime in. But a friend of ours said, they had a kid who just liked the candy, and we're like, what can we do with this? It's a great brand. And they're like, how about magic bears that live in a forest in vaguely medieval times with ogres? It's just so confusing. And it is one of those things where.
Yeah, it's kind of a Smurfs knockoff, but not quite.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's all Disney. And a friend of ours actually said the other day, it's one of those moments where when you're 11 and you saw it, like, this is the best thing ever. And the theme song's infectious, and I could still listen to that. We watch it at 45, you're like, what the hell was that?
I haven't revisited a lot of cartoons because this is the thing that happens to me. Sometimes I have this like you can't go home again moment because I've seen things that I remembered fondly, and then I've gone back and watched them, and I've been like, oh my god, like I wished I hadn't have done that because I just would have remembered it fondly instead of watching it again with my jaded 40-something eyes, right? And then you're like, oh, this is awful. I don't know why I like it, but the Gummi Bears is one of those things I'm probably not going to revisit for that reason because I kind of remember it fondly. But I remember a lot of other. There was a jag of medieval themed cartoons there. The Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. I remember.
I love
it. I remember it fondly.
Yes, that's what I can't revisit because I remembered it fondly, and there's no way it holds up. No way.
Also, this is not really medieval, but there was a Thundar the Barbarian, which was like a post-apocalyptic, which is a really weird thing for a kids cartoon, right? This post-apocalyptic waste world, and I think it was trying to cash in a little bit on Star Wars, or maybe it was like Star Wars and Masters of the Universe and all this kind of crap rolled into one.
Right.
But it was really weird, and it was about a barbarian who lived in a time in the future after the world's been destroyed by a nuclear war. And they actually would they go to places like Las Vegas and stuff, and you would see like the ruins of Las Vegas.
Right.
And it was right into town, and he had this companion, some kind of man beast thing.
Yes, it had. I knew its name at one point. Now I can't remember what it was.
Mukla or something, wasn't it? Or was that his species, or was that what his name was? Mukla.
Oh yeah, Ukla the monk.
Okay, and I don't know whether he was that a species thing, or was he bewitched? Was he like turned into that by a sorceress or something?
I do not remember the plot lines.
But it was a time. I remember in the intro, it would tell you like it's post-apocalyptic times, in a world where there's now sorcery and all this other, and he had a beam sword of some sort. It was kind of like Star Wars, and I don't know. It was just a kooky show, but I remember enjoying the heck out of it. Like that one was the one I remember like. Basically, I waited all morning for I wanted to watch Dungeons and Dragons, and then I wanted to see Thundar the Barbarian. And I kind of also think I liked there was a Spider-Man show that used to come on. It was Spider-Man, and he lived with Iceman and Firestar. You remember that one?
I remember that there was one. I did not watch that one because I was completely hooked on the 90s X-Men. Okay. Technically a little too old to watch the 90s X-Men, but I still watched it. Like I probably shouldn't have. I also watched all the Pokemon cartoons when I was far too old to be watching the Pokemon cartoons.
Yeah.
But I was obsessed for a little while. I was probably in my 20s when those came out.
Oh yeah. I've watched some Pokemon, but not like I'm not really watching it. Like it's been in the background when my kids were watching it. It used to come on at like 6 a.m. when you're trying to get the kids like to eat breakfast and get dressed, and you just put something on for noise, and I would kind of half pay attention. I mean, it's mildly amusing. I think it's funny that the Pokemon's all like only can say their own name except for Meowth, like all the other,
right?
Whatever your name is, like your turnip or something, and all you can say is turnip.
That's actually, I think that's what hooked me at the time. For some reason, I found that super endearing, and I loved it. I could live for that.
Yeah, they're
so ridiculous. But Heather wants to remind us that the Animaniacs is still a great show, and I think Looney Tunes in general, both the original Looney Tunes and their spin-offs, like, I mean, even Tiny Toons, but definitely Animaniacs, they kind of managed to bridge that gap and make some good, long-lasting stuff that you can watch a Looney Tunes cartoon and still completely get it, and it's still funny, and it still works. Like, it's still, I mean, they're a little out of date, don't get me wrong, but, well, not those ones. Let's not watch those ones. None of us watch those ones. Same with Disney. Like, there are some that should never be out of the vault, and I think everybody, including Disney, understands that. We don't need to do that. That was inappropriate at the time. It's definitely inappropriate now.
They still do that thing, didn't for a while. Looney Tunes would like one day a year would let them air the racist Bugs Bunny cartoons or something.
Jeez. But
just for historical purposes or something.
Right. And unrelated to that, but I also need to give a shout out to She-Ra and He-Man back in the day, because like Star Wars, it probably was one of the biggest toy to pop culture crossover, because you only watch the show to buy the toys and vice versa.
I would say Transformers as well.
Oh yes, for sure.
That was a complete vehicle for selling toys.
As a G.I. Joe as well.
Yeah, and it was. Although what about the G.I. Joes, regardless of a tie-in? Because I thought those were interesting to me. The Transformers, definitely I enjoyed the cartoon more than the toys. And same with Masters of the Universe. Actually, the cartoon was better than the toys were all like. It's funny because they came out at a time when everybody else made articulated toys.
Right.
And then they came out with these toys that were a different scale than every other toy.
Yeah.
First off, they were like a 9-inch figure that was like twice as wide, because they were all like, on steroids or something. And then they weren't articulated at all. They only had like the Star Wars figure movements.
Right. But they were just muscle bound, large. And I got an opinion for you. I got a very strong opinion about this. The He-Man toys and the She-Ra toys were not to scale with each other.
Huh.
They were completely different.
Yeah.
You couldn't play with them in the same place. Like the She-Ra dolls were actually really small. Like, I don't even know what the hell they were. They were just awful. With real, they were bad. They were bad, and you couldn't.
She-Ra was actually supposed to be. She was Prince Adam's sister, right?
Yes. Although spoilers, I guess, for people watching the current She-Ra. But yes, they were twins separated at birth.
And she was in another planet. Yeah, she got zapped to a completely different planet.
Yeah, possibly even a different dimension. I don't know. It's very confusing.
Yeah, I always thought it was like a different dimension. Yeah.
Yeah, the originals were light, very light on plot.
Yeah.
Very heavy on style, which was still not that good.
They designed the toys first, and then they threw them at some cartoonist and said, "Come up with some story for this shit," right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Please. There's a really good, if you're not familiar, there's a really good series on, I want to say it's on Netflix, right? Called The Toys That Made Us.
Yes.
And it'll give you the backstory on a lot of these toy cartoon things. And, spoiler alert, the toys came first. They wanted to sell toys, and they just designed them, and usually they took them to like Marvel or somebody and threw them in front of some writer and said, "Hey, give us a backstory on this shit, please," because we want to sell it to kids.
So essentially, a lot of these kids' cartoons were half hour long or 20-minute long with commercials.
Yeah.
They were intended to sell us things, and you know what? It works because we all owned that stuff.
I did own that stuff. Although, say again, I didn't really enjoy Masters of the Universe as a toy. I found them kind of because I was so used to. I was very into articulation when G.I. Joes came out and the elbows bent. Okay, because I was a Star Wars kid. I had all the Star Wars figures, but when G.I. Joes came out and they bent their elbows, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is so awesome that these elbows bend." And then each iteration of G.I. Joe, they actually made them a little better. They came out with a thing called swivel arm back action grip, which meant that not only they bend this way, but they also could do this. And they could hold a gun like a regular person would hold a gun.
Right.
You could put a gun in their hand and you could straighten it out instead of them holding it like some cockeyed weird thing like the Stormtroopers did. And it was like, oh my God. And now this is supposed to be about cartoons, so whenever we're talking about toys, and we shouldn't, although they're
we did go off on a tangent, but that's okay. But that said, do you have a so? I'll let you have your so.
I do want to say for a second, Masters of the Universe was rebooted in the 2000s. I can't remember. There was a reboot sometime when I was an adult, and they put a lot more thought into the plot that time. And it was a really great show. I think it only ran a season or two. Yeah, I'm not talking about Kung Fu Grip, Jay. I'm talking about Swivel Arm Battle Grip, it was called. They also added, sorry, I'm going to go back to this for a second. They also eventually added the forearm was rubber, which was better because their thumbs didn't break off when you shoved a machine gun into their hand. Because in the first iteration, when they were made of a hard plastic, a lot of my first gen G.I. Joes lost their thumb in battle. They were all disabled veterans, and they're still getting, well, they're poorly compensated for that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, their workers' comp was shit. But speaking of reboots, and I think this can transition us into cartoons made for an adult audience. Netflix currently has rebooted She-Ra, and it is stupid good. And they made it so it doesn't tie into the original. I mean, other than the characters existed before, they really did some character development and plot development and made a really, really good show. So highly recommend that if anybody wants to watch it.
I have still not watched that, but you know, they still check that out.
It's really good. You should totally check it out.
I kind of get that it's got a little bit of sort of a, if you aren't familiar with it, also sometimes my kid tells me about good cartoons, and there's one that I'm not well versed in. I've watched several episodes sitting in the room with him watching them. And by the way, my kid is 17 years old. But he's really into Steven Universe.
Yes.
I love that one.
Me too.
And that one got some really good sort of positive, like, I don't know, gender fluid overtones kind of, and just like, I don't know, you know, it's the kind of thing that would make certain people say this is the future liberal swan or something, but you know.
but maybe it is. No, I love Steven Universe, and for no other reason but because it's, I mean, I like it. It's just quality. They do a really good job with character development and story for an animated show, but each episode is 12 minutes long. So if I only have 12 minutes to sit down and eat my lunch, I can still watch an episode, and I don't have to worry about, you know, stopping it in the middle or anything.
And another good one along the same vein is Adventure Time. Also very short episodes. The great thing about Adventure Time, it kind of works like Harry Potter in the sense that it sort of ages with the kids. Like Adventure Time ran for many, many years, and when it first started out, it was very lighthearted and goofy. And it was just like, hey, this sort of takes place in this quasi-medieval sort of fairy tale universe. And then we find out later that like Thundar the Barbarian, this is actually, it takes place in post-apocalyptic Earth. Now the world is now called Ooh because it's so far after the apocalypse that they've forgotten what this is Earth or something. And there's vampires and space, ice wizards and all kinds of crazy nonsense going on. But I mean, it's got a little of everything. It's got humor, and it gets deep, and I don't know, it's got adventure and all these things, and it's, you know, it's just a great show. And like I said, it ages with you. So when it first starts out, it's goofy, and by the last season, it was really dark and deep. Like,
wow,
like you got more intense and more like, whoa, that's some dark shit, you know. So it was a really cool show. And, you know, and if you like if you like the silly parts, like the guy who does the voice of Bender on Futurama is also the voice of Jake the dog. And he still has that same kind of gruff attitude, you know, this kind of like devil may care, you know, whatever the hell. I don't, you know, get off my crap guy. I don't, you know.
Right.
I don't know, he's funny. He's a good foil is what I'm saying.
And I think those cartoons have kind of a, you know, Steven Universe, Adventure Time, and even the new She-Ra. They make good transitional cartoons. Like, you know, the cartoons of our childhood, like we said, if we watch them now as adults, we're like, what? But when you can watch something that is equally as entertaining for children as it is for adults. Like that's a fine art, you know?
Yeah. And it's like, it's kind of what was great about Bugs Bunny back in the day, right? Because it had those layers. Like Bugs Bunny had like the madcap slapstick nonsense that was for kids, and then it would have these like references to politics or to movies or something like that, and that was all stuff that like the adults would be like, oh ha ha, you know, and they'd laugh at that.
Exactly.
And it has that same thing. And I want to give a shout out while you're talking about that, things that work on multiple levels. SpongeBob SquarePants also really works that way. It's got all that going on. I mean, I remember when it first came out, like it was on for like probably 3 seasons, and I ignored it. I was like, that's bullshit. That's silly nonsense. You know, it's just a bunch of potty humor. Right. And then I I had a kid and I started watching it because he was watching it, and I found myself chuckling. Haha, this is actually kind of clever. My favorite episode, there's this one episode about swear words that I love to death, and I will laugh at that one. Because whenever they say a swear word, they put in dolphin noises or old-timey car horns or something, you know, instead of actually swear words. But it's just, I don't know, it's a hilarious episode. I love that one. Oh, the first SpongeBob movie that came out. What are you drinking now?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, no, I didn't. I was just cheersing myself. It's a Dr. Robot, which has nothing to do with cartoons, except that many of the cartoons we talk about will have robots.
Or doctors.
Or doctors.
But anyway, yes, the SpongeBob movie that came out, I don't know, late 90s, early 2000s, I don't remember. David Hasselhoff was in it as a cameo. Oh my God. That movie is so fucking funny. You got to watch that movie. If you haven't seen the movie, watch that movie. If you're a Van Halen fan, watch that movie.
All right. You've sold me. I have not, but I am going to. Maybe as soon as today, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. Yeah. And shoot, now I forgot about something else I wanted to give a mad shout out to, and then it just left my brain. Oh, you were talking about Dr. Robot, and it reminded me of A Show with a Robot from our childhood. Johnny Quest, very good show. So good a show that then they made Venture Brothers, which is basically a parody of Johnny Quest, and maybe a handful of other cartoons kind of rolled into one. But yeah, it was a great adventure cartoon when you were a kid. It's like you said, it doesn't hold up, but then it held up in our minds to the point that 10, 15 years later, these guys were like, hey, let's do this cartoon. It's basically Johnny Quest, but
exactly.
Funny.
Exactly.
Or we spoof on all the tropes of Johnny Quest. So that's kind of funny.
Exactly.
And then, one more robot. This is not robot related. This is doctor related. But Powerpuff Girls, I really enjoy. At least I haven't watched I think there's been a reboot of that one, right?
I believe so. I have not watched it. If there is. Yeah,
I remember the one back in the 90s. I loved Powerpuff Girls. Do you have a favorite Powerpuff Girl?
I don't know who they are. I watched it sometimes, but I wasn't like a super fan. And honestly, There's just one episode that it sticks in my head as this moment of pop culture. And we say this every time, but there was one episode where the Powerpuff Girls saw a bunch of horses and they just shouted ponies. And I still think this is the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. And I will still say it. I will constantly say it. I don't know who said it or any of that. And I don't know the names of the Powerpuff Girls, but I remember ponies.
Oh, well, anyway, I'm just going to say Bubbles is my favorite.
Was she the blonde one with the pigtails?
Yeah.
Who was the green one with the, black bob?
Let's see. It's Bubbles, and Blossom is the redhead, and I don't know. I know who you're talking about.
Watching those. Tell us.
This is the mean one, right? Because she's always surly. Like, she doesn't get surly. Actually, I really like the redhead too, because the redhead goes from sweetness to surly, like.
Right.
She'll be just like she's normally like hee, and then all of a sudden she's like, But the dark-headed one, yeah, she's always mean. Buttercup.
Yes.
She's always mean. Anyway, I don't know. They're all great. It's a good show. What else you got? You got something else you want to talk about?
Well, I think we need to transition into adult cartoons.
Sure.
Because you mentioned Venture Brothers, and a lot of these ones that we're going to talk about, many of them, if they weren't, they would be at home on like Adult Swim. So they're not.
Right.
They're animated shows. They're not meant for children, obviously, and we were talking before the show. Some of these shows have turned into literally my all-time favorite television shows that would be on a list with really well done dramas or comedies, and they happen to be animated. But I think we have to, Or do we start with our favorites, or do we start with the notable shout-outs?
Let's do notable shout-outs first, so we won't get on a tangent.
All right. Well, I think we have to mention, even though I have massive opinions about it, I think you have to mention The Simpsons whenever you talk about cartoons that were intended for not a children's audience, even though they had children as fans.
Yeah.
I think The Simpsons outlasted their relevance. They've been on TV for over 30 years. I think they outlasted it like maybe 20 years ago.
I knew The Simpsons was bad when Treehouse of Terror got bad. Like, I had already gotten to the point where I was tired of the regular Simpsons.
Yes.
But for like 4 years after The Simpsons sucked, Treehouse of Terror was the best episode.
Yes. I 100% agree with that.
And then when Treehouse of Terror started to suck, I knew it was done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, I think we watched last year's just because we're like, oh, it's Halloween and we love Halloween and let's watch it, and put it on. And I was like, what the hell is this? This is not good. How is this good? So yeah, they ran out of ideas 20 years ago.
And you also saw this, I don't know if you noticed this, but I noticed it as soon as Futurama started. I feel like all the good writers did a mass exodus. In they put all their energy, and maybe they were doing both. I don't know, but it seems like they put all their energy in Futurama because it was something fresh, and it gave them a chance to do something different. And so they really that was great for the first 4 or 5 years too. And Simpsons suffered, and I think Simpsons was already kind of suffering because they were tired of it, but then it suffered worse because they were doing something else that they were more excited about. That's kind of a feeling I have. I don't know.
I agree.
I also want to shout out for a brief second Beavis and Butthead, this is one of those ones I remember fondly. I'm not going to go back and rewatch it because I think it won't hold up over time. But it suffered from the fact that it was very misunderstood, or I think some people got that it was parody and it was making fun of a type of person. And then some people ended up idolizing the characters and thinking, oh, they're people I should look up to. I'm going to go set things on fire and be a dumbass.
Right.
And that's always the double-edged sword of parody, right? Is that maybe somebody won't get it. But I really do remember Beavis and Butthead fondly. And obviously Mike Judge is a very smart guy, and he writes very, very good. I've enjoyed Office Space and Idiocracy and King of the Hill. If we're going to get back to cartoons, I loved King of the Hill. I didn't actually watch the entire run of it because circumstances in my life led me to not have cable TV for a while. So I don't think I finished the last 3 seasons of it. But the time I was watching it, it was probably my favorite show on TV. And I used to tell people at the time it was the most real show on TV, which is crazy. It was a cartoon, but the way the characters behaved was more real to human nature. They did things that human beings would do, whereas sitcom characters a lot of times they behave in a manner where it's it's very contrived and it's not realistic.
Right.
They dealt with real issues and they behaved in a way, and they addressed issues. I mean, like the next door neighbor who's from another country, and so Hank Hill's a little xenophobic or whatever, that kind of thing. I don't know, they don't deal with, aside from Norman Lear programs, they don't even deal with that on real TV shows,
Right.
So it was a refreshing show to me just because it dealt with these things. It actually aired out some stuff sometimes, or sometimes when a cartoon says something that's so fucking real, like you take it differently than if a real show, if an actor says it. Like you've got this level of I don't know, this level of being removed from it so that you can kind of like think about it and not just react.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the same way I feel like to some degree like sci-fi works in that regard, right? Because it removes you from a situation and it kind of gives you like a parable sort of thing. Like, hey, here's the thing that's going on, but you're like, yeah, but it's not real because it's in outer space. But then later on you're like, oh my god, that does kind of apply to me.
There's a lesson in there. How about that? Well, and that's this is on the list of one of my all-time favorite shows. I like to like things, so like everything's my favorite, unless I genuinely don't like it. But otherwise, it's my favorite. But honest to goodness, and it fits into that description, is Bojack Horseman. I think it was not just a really good adult-oriented cartoon, but one of the best shows to have ever aired on television.
And again, the most real shit for the last couple of years. It's been the most real shit on TV for being a cartoon about a talking horse,
right?
Or a world where half animal, half people exist, or whatever the hell it is. It got to some real damn issues, and like there are lines in that thing that are so poignant,
Yes.
I remember there's one episode where Bojack's dating this owl girl for a minute, and at the end of the relationship when they're kind of breaking up or whatever, she says, when you're looking at the world through rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags.
Exactly.
And that shit, like, bam, that hit me hard. And then there's also this other line. There's this one episode where Bojack goes back to his family home, and he has this whole like reminiscence, and I was almost like this ghost of like, I don't know, but there's a line in there that says like you inherit your parents' trauma, but not the understanding of it.
Yes.
And that is some deep shit, and that's the truth, man. Like you totally do. Your parents put off, and you put off your trauma on your children. Like whatever your grief with the world is, you put it off onto them, but they don't have the grasp of why. Like you do, like a bad relationship with my father or whatever, and that's what's causing me to be like this. But then your kids just inherit the whatever the weird shit is off of it, right?
Right, exactly.
But without the context to know, like, why am I like this?
And the show it was so well written, and it was the voice cast was out of this world. Every single person and all the guest stars were insanely talented. People that you would see on non-animated movies and shows and be like, wow, that guy is amazing. I mean, some great things. And what I loved about it is the first season, they didn't explain anything. They're these anthropomorphic kind of animal people things, and also people, and they all live together, and there are no apparent other animals. It just appears, and it's just considered like they never explain it. It just is like that is the world, and I like that you never got that. You were just dropped into this Hollywood world, and you never got how this happened or why. And by halfway through the season, it didn't matter. And by the second season, shit got dark real fast.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And it's a show that deals with depression. It deals with substance abuse. It deals with, childhood trauma, all that stuff. And it's a freaking animated show about a horseman, literally, because it's called Bojack Horseman. Just so good. So good.
It was really good. It's a great show. Anybody who's watching this who hasn't watched it, go back and binge it this week.
Absolutely. You will. And it's dark and it's hard to watch in some places, but it's also really funny. And
it is really funny. And I gotta say, I want to throw out one. It pays such attention to detail. This is one of the little details that I loved about it. Okay, so the character Diane. The last season, she moves to Chicago, and they started drawing her a little bit more chunky than they used to draw her.
Yes,
did you notice?
Yes.
And it's hilarious because if you move to Chicago, that shit will happen to you. All they eat is meat and cheese in Chicago.
Well, and at the same time, she was dealing with her own depression and relationship issues, and she just sort of let herself go. And yeah, they absolutely do that. And Albert, ever hear that it was Lady Dynamite as a cartoon? I would argue that Lady Dynamite was Bojack Horseman as a real life TV show because Bojack came first. But fun fact, Maria Bamford is a voice actor, played several characters in Bojack Horseman because that is actually what she's known for.
Also, I want to give a shout out to Amy Sedaris.
Oh my goodness.
Amy Sedaris was so good in that. It's Princess Caroline.
I like her. Princess Caroline is my favorite of her characters, like of anything she's ever done. I didn't realize it was her because she's kind of slapstick when she plays in other things.
Yeah, usually she's like so silly and over the top, and she was kind of serious and as a cartoon cat.
Exactly. Do you have a favorite BoJack character?
You know, I do and I don't. Yeah, I'm gonna say Mr. Peanut Butter. You know, it's funny. So I thought Mr. Peanut Butter at the onset, like when I thought he was just so like he's just, hey, I'm crazy. I'm Mr. Peanut Butter. I do what I want. And I was like, oh, it's so funny. He's like a Labrador Retriever because that's what they're like, kind of, as a dog, right?
Exactly. Yes.
I just do whatever and I'm happy. And then you find out like the last season, like his story arc gets kind of fucking dark, and you're like, whoa, you know. And he says some things, and you know it's funny because he actually said something funny. I want to say in like the third season, he says to Diane, he says, no, Diane, that's not what you're supposed to do. You're just supposed to do stupid shit to fill up your life until you die. And I thought he was being silly. But then after that last season, I went back and reanalyzed it, and I'm like, oh my God, he was actually saying something dark and poignant at the time.
Yes. And yeah, Mr. Peanut Butter is, of course, performed by Paul F. Tompkins, who, again, a comedian that's not his normal character, and it made it so perfect. Which is weird. I have to pick Todd because for the same reason. So Todd starts out as this like kind of weird stoner kid that lives on Bojack's couch, just totally squats in his house. And you kind of think he's a throwaway character. And he's voiced by Aaron Paul. So he kind of gets that Jesse Pinkman thing going. But he gets he has so much wisdom as a character. It's brilliant and it's so well done.
Yeah. All right, so in the interest of time, I'm going to leave Bojack Horseman and talk about one or two other great cartoons before we have to end.
I know. I could honestly talk about this for days.
Yeah, so let's talk for a second about Rick and Morty, which I love and hate simultaneously.
Yes, I feel the same way.
Rick and Morty has some similarities with Bojack Horseman in that it deals with some really dark shit. And sort of like, you know, how we're all sort of pawns of the universe and that kind of thing. Unfortunately, it's kind of become, I don't know, it's gotten like adopted by incels who think it's kind of like the Beavis and Butthead thing where people don't understand satire, and they think you're supposed to identify with this jackass of a character who thinks he's above everything. And so they're like, yeah, that's me. I get it. And it's so far, I mean, even the fan base even goes so far as to say, oh yeah, you know, like you have to get this. You have to be into like, you know, and they think they've got, it's kind of like this, the conspiracy theory set almost, right? Like they think they've got one up on everybody. They know something that you don't know.
Right.
And like, you're not going to get it. You don't get the, you know, how great it is or whatever. No, I get it. It's a funny show. But it's a funny show, is what it is. And does it have some deep shit once in a while? Yeah. But, you know, you're not supposed to identify with Rick. Rick's a jackass.
You're supposed to think he's an asshole because he is.
He's an asshole.
He's not someone to emulate. He's a cautionary tale.
Exactly. So, you know, like the whole point of it has been missed on people. And even to the point where the creator hates it now. Like, that's what you've done. You've taken it, made the creator hate it.
Right.
Like right. He's gonna have a spinoff show. He's already got a spinoff show. He's doing something else now. And now the writing.
We do need to mention briefly.
Yeah, the writing on Rick and Morty is gonna go to shit because it's gonna be Futurama and The Simpsons all over again. Great. Yeah. I'm glad you guys had fun with Rick and Morty. Now you ruined it.
Exactly. No, and so Rick and Morty was a collaboration between Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon, who a lot of people might know. Dan Harmon was the creator of Community. And Dan Harmon has a bit of a reputation. When he loses interest with something or has to butt heads with somebody, he's just out. He's out. And that happened with Community. And he left for the 4th season, and it was shit. Like, Community is one of the greatest TV shows of all time, except for the 4th season, because he left. And he did the same thing with Rick and Morty. He's over it because the people ruined it for him. And then his co-creator, Justin Roiland, just went on to do a spin-off that's just started. We've watched 2 episodes so far, Solar Opposites, which has exactly the same kind of humor that Rick and Morty started with. It's dark, it's funny, it's weird sci-fi shit, and it's good, and I enjoy it so far. So we didn't even get to like movies. I mean, there are so many things. We are going to have another animation episode for sure.
This is the great thing about the show. We're going to talk about everything we talked about a second time.
That is true. I mean, that is sort of the nature of opinions, right? Like, once you have one, you just keep having more and more and more.
Sure.
That's how they work. So we do have some business to take care of course. Mailbag. First, we want to remind you all, send us emails, send us messages. Yeah. We want to hear from you. We know you can comment here, but we want to know your deep inner thoughts.
Yeah. If there's a subject you would like us to go on about, be sure and send it to us. Maybe like not while we're on the air, or I mean, you can do it while we're on the air, and maybe we'll address it later. But if you do it while we're not on the air, it'll give us something to talk about next week. And then also, if you hate something we said, or if you just have something you want to interject or say, hey, last week when you said blah blah blah, you were really off the mark. Feel free. This is the time to address it. If you want to call me names, we're simulcasting this on YouTube now, so I'm kind of waiting for vulgar remarks, for people to question my sexuality and say horrible things about me.
Right, so, absolutely. Just play porn music over the episode because that's what people do when they're on the internet. Yeah, no, it could get bad. But so I do have to say, I did get called out on our music episode when you asked me what my favorite musician was, what my favorite artist was, and I couldn't come up with an answer.
Yeah.
So I couldn't because I like to like things, so literally like everything's my favorite. But on the spot, I said Rachel Bloom, and I have been told that Rachel Bloom cannot be my favorite musician because she's a comedian that happens to write funny songs, and that's 2 different things. So I'm not allowed to do that. So I have done some soul searching in part of a fun thing we're doing with some other friends where you have to pick favorite songs for various categories. And it occurred to me, I keep dipping into the same 3 wells over and over and over again. So apparently I do have favorite musical artists. And they are not in any particular order. Mike Doughty, Jason Isbell, and Josh Joplin. So if anybody really wanted to know who I liked as a musical artist, I'm committing. Those 3 artists are my all-time favorites.
Okay.
All right. So Bill, things that are extra. What do you got for us?
I had something before we started, and now I duck off again. I've had enough beer that I've forgotten about it.
That is also so. Yeah, we encourage people to drink while they watch the show because we are funnier if they drink, but also we're drinking. So that happens.
I've now lost my train of thought on what was the. Gosh darn! I had an extra thing picked out before we began. I need to put a note here in front of me.
Dude, let's say,
memory's dumb. Okay, I'm going to talk about this for a minute because I don't know if you guys noticed, but like I feel like my memory's been worse since this whole thing started because of the I don't know, the time has become meaningless and everything's become meaningless. And I swear, like, I forget more shit than I used to forget. Now, maybe I'm just going senile at an early age. I don't know. If that's the case, then that's somebody else's problem, not really mine, because I'll forget about it. But, Beagles? Yeah, I don't like beagles. Oh, I was going to talk about dogs. That's the truth. I was going to talk about dogs. Yeah.
That's magic.
Damn, my dog. Oh, my God. So first off, those things are the most unappreciative animal on earth. I mean, they kind of appreciate you, but then they don't because they like, oh, I've got this dog, and if you leave the garage, so if I leave the garage door open for a minute, and I'm not paying her any attention, she goes in there, and I store the trash in the garage for the week. I don't have a trash. We live out in the boonies, so I take the trash and I throw it in the back of the truck and I drag it to town once a week. But if I open the garage door prior to the dragging of the trash to town, the dog will tear the trash up all over my yard. And then she knows she's not supposed to do it because as soon as I go out the yard, she's scared. She's not going to hang around because she knows I'm mad at her. She did to them. So it's like if you're aware while you're doing the thing that it's going to make you mad, then don't do it.
Well, you're supposing you can reason with a dog.
Yeah.
So dogs, they are extra.
Dogs are extra. Yes. If you have a dog, you know what I'm talking about. They're extra.
I think that's actually much like to the Mr. Peanut Butter. Mr. Peanut Butter was the most extra character on Bojack Horseman, and he was a dog. Oh, yeah. And he married another dog at some point who was also extra.
Well, she was more extra than he was. Oh my gosh.
Like, Pickles, yeah, you didn't think that could happen, and it did. All right. So all we've got is some engineering notes. First of all, everybody like and subscribe. Share the podcast. Tell your friends about it. We're ridiculous. It's hilarious. You drink, we babble on about stuff. It's fun. So tell people, tell your friends, like and subscribe. Facebook, YouTube, all those places.
Yeah. Also, be sure if you've got a business or something like that you want us to plug for right now, we got special rates called free right this minute, but eventually we'd love to have real sponsors. I kind of feel like we probably ought to get 10 episodes under our belt before people pay us, but at that point,
at least,
yeah. But in the meantime, if you've got a project or a business you'd like to plug, holler at us and we'll plug that. Anyway, yeah, that's that. And I did want to mention at the end of the show here that Bill Has Opinions is engineered and produced by Laura Lavoie, and the opinions on the show that Bill espouses are the opinions of Bill and not anybody else, and the opinions that Laura espouses are probably those of Laura, not anybody else.
Hopefully.
And anyway, we'll see you next week.
All right. We don't know what next week's going to be, so tune in to find out. All right. We'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.